Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2022 annual Valley Made Manufacturing Summit. Good morning and good afternoon to you all. I'm Margot Kim from ABC 30. I'm so relieved to see all of my fellow lottery losers here this afternoon. But of course, I'm equally excited to be invited back to this amazing event. Every year it gets bigger and better, and I'm personally so proud to be part of it. So thank you again for inviting me to serve as your MC for this wonderful event. It's a time when the community comes together to celebrate our Valley manufacturers and all they contribute to our region, to Central California, to the nation, and the world. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the presentation of colors by the Fresno High Junior ROTC and the national anthem sung by Nick Sterling of Roosevelt School of Arts.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Sergeant Jensen, for bringing your junior ROTC team today. The Valley also manufactures talent. We have so much talent coming from our region, especially Roosevelt School of Arts, of course, the alma mater of our Audra McDonald. This year marks the 7th annual Valley Made Manufacturing Summit, and hopefully you've had a chance to visit some of the exhibitors, attend a couple of breakout sessions, and learn some new things along the way, maybe even found your next intern or future employee. And don't forget to stick around at the end of the event for a fun little happy hour, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere. There will be a special prize given out during that time. And speaking for ABC 30, we are especially proud to profile stories of Valley-made companies and products that continue to enrich our community and our region, and of course, the rest of the state. Before we go on, I'd like to see if there are any diamond manufacturers here today. If there are anybody who manufactures diamonds, come see me after, please. All right, at this time, I'd like to ask the CEO of the San Joaquin Valley Manufacturing Alliance to please come up to the stage, Janelle Taylor Cumpy.
Thank you, Margot. Welcome, and thank you all for coming today. What a remarkable event this is and turnout. Our journey together has definitely been amazing. It has been educational, practical, and transformational. Together, we are elevating our essential industry while creating quality jobs and shared prosperity across our region. Early on, we realized that business had to expand its role in this community. While economic development does remain central, without human development and quality environment, companies will not flourish and our community will suffer. That's why SJVMA is far more than just an industry cluster. It is committed to civic stewardship. This means that our remarkable board recognizes its responsibility not only to run its business and their businesses, but responsible for education, social equity, the environment, and public policy so that we work together to create inclusive prosperity and well-being. I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude towards all those that have supported our Valley Made Manufacturing Summit this year. We couldn't have made today happen without you, so thank you so much. I'd like to ask that you just please hold your applause till the end. I have a little bit of a list here. Well, I extend a very special thank you to our top sponsors, Betts Company, Bruno's Iron and Metal, CMTC, Moss Adams, State Center Community College District, the Business Journal, KMJ, Cohen Communications, the team at Top Hand Media, Booth and Associates, Borga, Fresno State, Central Motherlode Region Consortium, Chevron, City of Fresno, Fresno City College, Fresno County EDC, Fresno Unified School District, and Wawona Frozen Foods. Thank you all so very much. A very special thank you to Deborah Nankerville of the Fresno Business Council for always reminding us to lead as stewards first and citizens first. It's sometimes one of the hardest paths to take, but we can get so much more accomplished this way. Thank you to Mike Betts as well, and he is the founder of SJVMA, and Liz McIlvain, our chair, and all of our board members. I'd like to ask if you could please stand so we can thank you and give you a warm thank you, applause too. They're remarkable, having the best board. And thank you to our newest SJVMA team member. She's running around here somewhere, Tara Kitefors. Tara, thank you. You were baptized by fire. She's only been on board for the last 2 months, and here we are, and threw her right into the mix here. Tara, your grace, energy, and willingness to do whatever it takes is really very, very much appreciated. And then Kim Rocca, my extended team member, thank you for helping execute all of this today. And we are just grateful for many of our team members and our board members as well, our partners and our colleagues who have made this event possible along with our work throughout the whole year. I am so humbled by those of you that have been at this work for decades, because it has been decades. Once many in Fresno believed that concentrated poverty and low-cost economy were inevitable. Fortunately, a handful did have hope, and we've been at this for a while. They realized that things could be different and vowed to come up with a new way, a collaborative way to conduct business. Every person here and every member of the Alliance, every partner that has helped along the way is part of this success story. Our hope today is that you will leave this event inspired to learn more, engage more deeply, and share what you have learned with your colleagues along the way. Together, we are doing more than just advancing an industry sector and economic prosperity. We are really creating community and we are creating the opportunity to belong and become a part of something greater. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts at the end of today and end of the program this afternoon. We have a wonderful keynote that I am so excited for you all to hear. He is no stranger to Fresno, and I'll be joining again on the stage with a panel of experts that work in this area, and we'll dive a little bit more deeper into specific things throughout our region and thoughts, but not before we introduce a man that needs really no introduction. Is Mayor Jerry Dyer. Has he arrived yet? Not yet. Okay, so we will just move on then. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Janelle. I'd like to take the time to draw your attention to the centerpieces at the middle of your table, if you haven't already called dibs on it. The wooden boxes were constructed by teams of students throughout Fresno Unified, and they are filled with local goodies from today's food sponsors for you to take with you or to enjoy at your table. So thank you, Fresno Unified. And remember, it's for everybody at the table. Sharing is caring. I'd like to now move on with our program and to introduce our keynote speaker. Please help me welcome Deborah Nankivil. Deb has been a pillar in our community for the past 3 decades. She represents the true meaning of civic stewardship. The CEO of the Fresno Business Council, Deborah Nankivil.
Wow, hello everyone. What an amazing group of people here today. It's amazing. I feel so humbled and so privileged to introduce to you someone that has really changed my world. When I first heard about Mark Peters, it was through his mentor, Fred Keller. I was invited to a national think tank meeting for the governors who were looking for a new way to conduct the community business. Fresno has been on radar for a long time. Fred introduced us to Mark Peters, and he sent us the manuscript of his book. And when we read that, it was like, I have to go see this. So I went back to Grand Rapids, and everything in the book is true, and it's even better than that. What he has managed to do, not just in his company, which he transformed into a community, he got his peers to work together to create a platform to support their employees, as he also serves as a philanthropist. He has demonstrated what happens when the business community steps up to work with partnership with others to solve problems. And we've been calling it the power of unity, because when we realize we leave no one behind because we're a community, and we hold everybody to their highest level of performance because we're accountable, we can change anything. And so I'd like to invite Mark up here. And please join me in welcoming him back to Fresno.
All right. Well, thank you, Deb, for that introduction. I'm a little curious today how it's colder in California than it is in Michigan in November. But so be it. I'm honored to be here today. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you bring today. I'm also honored by the trust that Deb and Janelle have put in me to use the next few minutes in a meaningful and impactful way. Personally, I'm amazed at what this room represents. People interested and invested in solving some of the toughest problems that we face today. There is much that stands behind all of us here today, and it people with backgrounds in business, education, nonprofit, government, and experience in life. It brings to mind poem number 10 from Rilke's book, For the Hours of Prayer. My life is not this steeply sloping hour in which you see me hurrying. Much stands behind me. I stand before it like a tree. What stands behind all of us here today is an almost 30-year vision for a better Fresno. This is taken from Deb's book, Bugle Call. I was sobered by Fresno's challenges, which appears to have no civic sector, no platform from where the community could come together to solve problems and cast visions. The potential leaders didn't trust one another, and most improvement efforts were fragmented. The early years of the Fresno Business Council were mostly about gaining a better understanding of issues, people, and the business of the community, and also building relationships, often called social capital. What a change. I love the unity theme of the summit. And what I sense is a real desire to create a community of belonging. So let me share a little of what stands behind me. I'm an imperfect Christian. I am a grateful father of an articulate, intelligent, and authentic 16-year-old girl, and I have loved every stage of her life. I'm a second-generation family enterprise owner, actively trying to change our family narrative around our enterprise. I'm an author. I'm a storyteller. I'm passionate. I'm curious. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a culture guy. I'm not a numbers guy. You're going to want to remember that. And I love the water. So, how I ended up here today can be summed up in one word: synchronicity. You heard a little bit from Deb about how we got introduced, but we were on a phone call together, and I had to leave the phone call early. Deb was learning a little bit about Fred's triple bottom line work, and I asked her if she wanted a follow-up call about the source, and she did. I ultimately sent her my manuscript of my book, which she read and ultimately wrote an endorsement for my book. Thank you, Deb. But she sent me her book, Bugle Call. Then she invited me to come out to Fresno, which I did for 3 days, and I had the opportunity to observe a lot of the great work that's being done out here. I got to visit the CART program, was part of the Fresno Business Council, visited United Way, Every Neighborhood Partnership, the Fresno Mission Center. I got to attend the Fresno Clovis Prayer Breakfast, where I got to meet the mayor. And I also got to hear the former mayor, Ashley Swearingen, speak. And when she was speaking, she referenced a book by Dick Johansson called A Passion for Stewardship. Now, I have sort of a visual memory thing, and I looked at the cover of that book, and I knew that I had read it. And when I went home, I found it in my library, and it was all marked up. So it was just one more connection that I have to Fresno. Now, when people are asked to speak, it's usually because they're an expert or they've done something heroic. But I'm neither an expert nor a hero. I'm a little more of a survivor. This is a little closer to the truth. Someone's got to laugh. That's a funny slide. All right, thank you. However, my tale of caution has become a tale of rebirth and purpose. And I'm excited to share my story today, not because I think it's particularly special or courageous. It's not. It's just my story. But I believe that some of the truths I've learned along the way are important to share. And I'm also willing to bet there's people in this room that have similar stories. And I'm also willing to bet there's people in this room who have struggled with some of the same social issues that I've struggled with. And I'm willing to bet that we have similar threads running through our lives. My hope is some of what I've learned the hard way, what I've learned the hard way will inspire you to continue to use your influence to drive change that we all want to see. So I grew up with 8 sisters, no brothers. My father's first wife passed away and left him with 6 daughters while he was trying to get his business started. So he hired a nanny. Think Sound of Music. I'm so glad that slide played because I told Carrie I was going to sing it if it didn't. Yes, the nanny became his second wife. My mother, the mother of my 2 younger sisters, my mom and dad were 24 years apart. My father died in 1995 at the age of 86. My mother died in 2016 at the age of 84. My father was an accomplished inventor. In the course of his life, he developed and implemented 2 transformational inventions, and his third big invention was used as the foundation of the business I have the privilege of running today. As a father, he almost never raised his voice. He was incredibly disciplined. He was never late. He arrived at work at 7 a.m. He left work at 4. He went to the bank, the post office. He was home at 5. He fed his fish. He changed his clothes, he played with the kids, we ate dinner at 6. After dinner, he would read 2 newspapers laying on the floor, the Grand Rapids Press and the Wall Street Journal. When I was very young, my sisters and I would climb on my dad and, wriggle under his arms, and he'd let us fill in the O's and the zeros. I have fond memories of some of those early days of my life. My dad was soft-spoken. He was even-tempered. But he worked really hard. He made sure he was an expert in everything that he did. In his life, he had over 60 issued patents and trademarks that he wrote himself. He was not very relational. Emotion was not something that he was comfortable with. Now, my mother, on the other hand, was very relational. She sang, she acted, she taught voice lessons. She loved the opera and the theater. So again, I tell people there was a good balance in our life. So she brought those things, like the Sound of Music. But there was no doubt who was the disciplinarian in our home. And so I've chosen a couple stories to share with you about that. The first one I call Take the Money. This happened when I was in middle school, and a friend of mine called and asked if I wanted to go to the movies with him and his dad. So I said, sure, and I asked my dad if I could have $5 to go to the movies. My dad said, sure. He said, I'll give you $1 to wash each of my cars, each of my 5 cars. I said, well, Dad, they're going to be here in an hour. There's no way I get that done. He said, all right, well, I guess you're not going to the movies and you're washing the cars for free. So I learned that if my dad offered money, I took the money and I just adjusted my schedule. The second story is a little bit tougher for me. So this happened in between my first and second semester of my second year of college. And you need to know that I was not an A student. In fact, I maybe brought home 2 A's in my entire high school and early college career. So I get my report card in the mail between semesters. I open it up, and I had taken 6 classes. I had 4 A's and 2 A minuses. So I am running around our house, and I'm like, woohoo, I'm so excited. And if I were artistic, and if I could paint, I could still paint this picture. I end up in the kitchen of our house. My dad says, let me see those. And he's leaning up against the stove. He looks down, and I'm across the room. He looks up at me, and he says, there's 2 A minuses on here. I just looked down, and I walked out of the kitchen, completely defeated. A couple days later, I didn't speak to him for 2 days. A couple days later, I'm in the living room of our house reading by the fire. My dad comes in and he says, you know, I really am proud of you. And I just looked at him and I said, it's a little late. The point is, my dad was tough on me. But he was tough on all his kids. I wasn't singled out. My dad worked hard. And I think he just wanted his kids to be successful. So I started working for my dad when I finished 7th grade. He said, no more summers at the family cottage for you. It's time to go to work. So I was given the option of working in our yard at our home or at the plant. And I like to think I was a pretty smart 12-year-old. So I said, I'm going to work in the yard because Dad's going to go to work. I also was a severe allergy sufferer. So within 3 days, my allergies chose my fate for me, and it was off to the temperature-controlled, air-filtered environment of a food plant. My first day of work, my dad got the supervisors, today we would call them our team leaders, around his desk, introduced me. This is my son. If he does anything wrong, fire him. Don't come talk to me, fire him. Now, as the father of, an intelligent, articulate, authentic 16-year-old girl, I have a really hard time picturing ever having this conversation. But as a 12-year-old who grew up with a father who never bluffed, it made a huge impression. So consequently, I worked really hard and I made a lot of friends because I was pretty sure I'd eventually screw something up. These friends of mine, these new friends of mine, lived very different lives than I did. This was the beginning of my awareness that something wasn't quite right. Many, many years later, after having the opportunity to attend McDonald's Hamburger University, our company has been a supplier to McDonald's since the early 70s. I decided I wanted to bring some of the things back to the plant that I'd learned, and so I set a training room up on the 3rd floor of our building. Now, the 3rd floor is kind of a warehouse in our building at that time, and I didn't ask for permission to do it. There was this room that had a sliding door on it. It was perfect for a clandestine classroom. So we moved some tables and some chairs and some whiteboards in, and we started doing this training stuff. Well, I started doing it, and we were getting great results. We were seeing results on the plant floor. We were seeing better communication, people working together. It was just what we needed. Except one day my dad needed to get his car fixed. And he needed me to follow him to the car dealership and bring him back to the plant. So he tried paging me. I didn't answer. His assistant said, well, why don't you look for Mark on the 3rd floor? I'm sure my dad was fairly puzzled by that. And he went up to the 3rd floor and he walked in on one of my training sessions. And in his own quiet way, he sent everybody back to the plant floor. We went, got his car to the dealership. We came back, he had the maintenance department take the whiteboards, the tables and the chairs out, and he padlocked the door. And he told me, we'll have none of that. Well, I'm not easily discouraged. So 3 months later, I cut the padlock off, put the whiteboards and the tables and the chairs back in, and had the maintenance department put an intercom in my training room. So if I ever was paged again, I could respond. At this point, I've learned an interesting lesson. It's easier to seek forgiveness than to seek permission. Now, my father wasn't a tyrant, but he expected things to go his way. In our business, there was only one undisputed expert, and under his leadership, Butterball Farms was a highly profitable company with an extremely dysfunctional culture. And so it went. I spent my 20s trying to figure out how to make things happen in spite of my dad, and getting to know the people that work for us. And it was eye-opening. I learned that sometimes they had to choose between buying food or clothes for their kids. When their car broke down, they didn't have money to fix it. They were tired. They were stressed from having too little money to meet everyday expenses. The kind of stress that wears you down when it becomes a way of life. The irony is that I would hear these stories and I would go home to a 10,000 square foot house with 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, full-size tennis court out back. I asked my dad about it. He said, in America, everybody's got equal opportunities, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And then he'd tell a story about someone he knew that had made their way out of poverty. And if that one person could do it, so could anybody. Well, over the years, this kind of ate at me. I was raised in a conservative Christian home and believed that everybody is made in God's image. I grew up in a country where everybody has inalienable rights, but the people in our organization weren't treated as equals by my father. It was clear to me that they were disrespected, largely insecure, and stuck in dead-end jobs. Or low-wage jobs, however you want to look at that. The older I got, the more that disconnect between my values and the way I saw people treated bothered me. And I began to wonder if somehow our family business wasn't contributing to a broken system. Sitting on the roof of our house, family house, when I was with my sister one day, I said to her, if I ever have the chance, I'm going to figure out a different way to run a business. I don't tell these stories just simply to be entertaining. Hopefully they're a little entertaining. But I want to put some of my developmental years into context for you. I learned to be scrappy. I learned to try things. I met some great people who were hungry for someone to believe in them and for a different way of life for their family and themselves. And where I developed a desire to actually do something about it. When I was 29 years old, everything in my world changed. In 1984, just after my father's 85th birthday, he had a heart attack while he was driving one day. Ended up in the hospital in critical condition. And this triggered me to make a phone call to his long-term friend and attorney, Frank. Frank had worked with my father since his first invention, so they were lifelong friends. I told Frank what was going on. And Frank says, well, Mark, I've been talking to your dad for years about an estate plan. I'm like, wait, what? My dad's 85 and he doesn't have an estate plan? Well, he's got a 2-page will. Keep me posted. We ended our conversation. So you got to picture this. My dad's in the hospital, critical condition. We don't know if he's going to survive. I'm in my office, 29 years old, thinking, what happens if Dad passes away? Fortunately, he didn't pass away. He recovered. However, true to my dad's style, he didn't believe he had a heart attack. When he got released from the hospital, he told my mom to get his clothes and bring him to the office. Yep. The next 18 months of my life with my father were probably the best times I ever had with him. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to push my own agenda. I stopped trying to fight with him, and I started listening to him. I was amazed at how much knowledge he had that he'd accumulated over the course of his life. I also managed to extract a promise from Frank that he'd get my dad to do something about his estate plan. This next picture represents, for me, one of my favorite memories with my dad. So this was taken at a Disney food show, not significantly different than a trade show. Disney's food shows were kind of fun. It was one of the food shows we really enjoyed going to. And at the end of the show, we had the opportunity to go visit the Magic Kingdom. So this is Disney World in Florida. And my dad did not want to use a wheelchair. So we had quite an argument about the wheelchair actually in this picture. And I prevailed because Disney is a lot of walking. So we were staying in the Contemporary Hotel. And if you've been there, you know the monorail system runs through the Contemporary Hotel. We got a monorail, went to the ticketing place, got our tickets. My father wanted to see three attractions: the Hall of the Presidents, the Magic Carpet Ride, and It's a Small World. The guy at the ticket counter said, those attractions are at 3 different parts of the park. It's 9 o'clock, the park closes at 10, you're never gonna make it. So we get through the ticketing area, and my dad's in a wheelchair, and I lean down and I said, Dad, what do you think? And he looks up at me and he said, let's go for it. So I'm literally running through Disney World with my father in a wheelchair, and guess what? We made it to all 3 of those attractions. So, on the way out, we encounter the closing parade. Now, if you've never encountered the closing parade at Disney, you need to put it on your bucket list. Disney does such a great job of creating this magical experience. So we're sort of at the end of Main Street. The Disney Cinderella's Castle's behind us. And, you know, there's the dancing and the singing and the fireworks. And I look down at my father, and he is completely engaged in what's going on around him. And there are tears coming down his face. Now I can count on maybe 2 fingers how many times I'd seen my dad tear up. So this was a really special memory for me. This was in June of '95, and it was about 6 weeks before my father was admitted to the hospital. When he was admitted, the doctors told him he had 24 to 46 hours to live unless he went on kidney dialysis. He told the doctors, or he asked the doctors about quality of life. The doctors didn't give him any great guarantees. So he said, no, thank you. I'm not afraid to die. So my mom and I had some conversations, and I told her I wasn't going to leave the hospital. And she was going to go home and get some stuff. And I asked her if she had had a chance to read a letter that I had written to my father a couple months prior. She said she hadn't, so I asked her to get it for me. So she brought it. And I decided to read this letter to my dad myself. Now, you've heard a little of my history with my dad. He was very critical of my creative writing, so reading an emotional letter to my dad was a bit of a risk. But I did it, And when I finished reading this letter, and my dad's laying in his hospital bed, he put his arms out. And I fell into his chest, and I received the embrace that I'd wanted my entire life. And I laid in his arms and I cried. After a little while, I don't remember how long, he fell asleep. I went down the hall to one of the waiting rooms and I fell asleep. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear my dad's voice. "You find my son? I know he's here somewhere." I went down, I sat next to his bed for the next few hours. About 6 o'clock, I called my mom and I said, "I don't think Dad's going to live too much longer." Somewhere around 6:30, he slowly stopped breathing. I turned around, there was a nurse behind me in his room. And I said to her, "He just died, didn't he?" She said, "Well, actually, he died a few minutes ago." But it was completely quiet. I'm not sure what I expected, but for a man who lived with so much force, I expected more of a punctuation mark. But it was just quiet. And if it hadn't been for those last maybe 20 hours, I truly believe that my life would have taken a different trajectory. If I had not gotten that embrace from my father, I think I would have carried a different kind of an anger forward. Over the next couple of weeks, I also learned that my dad, in fact, had completed some sort of an estate plan, and I was going to get the opportunity to run the business. That's a story for a presentation on family business transition, which I don't have time to get into today. There was a lot that I didn't know, but there were 3 things that I did know. One, I wanted to change the culture in our business. I was not happy with the way people were treated. 2, I was not smart enough to do this on my own, and I was going to need a lot of help. 3, I knew at this point in my life I had to move fast, and this slide sort of sums it up. All right, that's a little bit humorous too. I've had people in my life that tell me I don't do funny, so I need these slides to help me out. So how bad was the culture in our business? I'm going to try to put this in perspective for you, and since I'm in a group of manufacturers and employers, you're going to appreciate this. In the 2 years prior to my dad passing, we processed about 1,000 W-2s each year for 180 jobs. The turnover was really only in 50 positions. We had an employee at the time that summed it up best when he said, "Butterball Farms is a place you work while you're looking for a real job." Ouch. So in my ignorance, I thought all I had to do was undo this toxic culture and the business would just turn around, right? That's how it works in the movies. So I dove in, I began to make the changes that I'd dreamed of for so long. Now, I don't want you to think that we did everything right, but we did do some things, like developing our mission statement and guiding principles, which we still abide by today. But while I was focused on improving our culture and our hiring practices and training practices and beginning to establish an organization like The Source, I was blind to some of the problems in our business which would soon threaten us with bankruptcy. Now, you remember I mentioned I wasn't a numbers guy, right? So at this point in my story, my dad had always told me I didn't have what it took to run a business, and he's right. Between 1995 and 2000, I managed to significantly grow the business. I doubled our top line. I also significantly leveraged the business, and I ended up in a severely negative cash flow situation. I also had no idea what any of that meant. But I was simultaneously obsessed with finding a way to have a more positive impact on the lives of the people who work for us. So one day, I'm on the roof of our building. You guys hear a rooftop theme coming through my presentation. And I'm thinking. And I start looking around. This is actually from the rooftop of our building. I was looking around at all the businesses just within a half-mile radius, and I began to wonder if they were experiencing some of the same problems that we were experiencing in our workforce. So I went and talked to the HR people of the companies, and sure enough, they were experiencing the same things. And guess what? They wanted to help the people that work for them, but they didn't have the tools. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the expertise. I talked to some of the business owners, and we pay fair wages, we offer good benefits, we do what we can. We want to treat our people right. But that's not exactly what our businesses are set up for. So I went and saw a friend of mine, Fred Geller. And you've heard a little bit about Fred already. He owns a business called Cascade Engineering in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he'd been doing a lot of social innovation work. And so I asked him, do you think we could do in a group of employers what you've been able to do in your company? Now, his company is significantly bigger than my company. I couldn't afford to do the kinds of things that he was doing on my own. He said, I don't know. But he helped me get 16 business leaders together. We did a little pitch, and I made the ask. I asked these guys for $500 a month for 12 months just to see if this thing would work. Well, one of the guys raised his hand, and he says, Mark, how'd you come up with that number? I mean, Bob over here has got 300 employees. I've got 15. That's not very fair. And I said, it was pretty unfair. I'm like, I know for a fact that everybody in this room can afford $500 a month for 12 months to see if this will work. Well, we got 8 of the businesses to sign up. We had a budget. We hired an executive director. We got some matching funds from the Grand Rapids Community Foundation, and we were off to the races. Now, almost 20 years later, I'm amazed at this thing that we started. Today, we call it The Source. It's its own 501c3 organization with member companies' human resource representatives as the board of directors for the organization. And it's really aimed at solving a threefold problem. First of all, retention or turnover for the member companies. Second of all is helping stabilize the lives of the people that come to work for us so they can stay at work and they can get to a point where they have an opportunity to be successful. By the way, those destabilized lives are often a root cause for turnover. Third, it's addressing the community impact of so many people that live on the edge. We have 25 member companies covering over 9,300 people. The statistics are staggering. Employees that work for one of the member companies that have a welfare case get to see their own caseworker at the source. We have a 97% retention rate among that population versus the state's retention rate of 57% for people that have to report to the state central office and deal with their caseworkers. We are killing the state's numbers. We're saving them millions of dollars and keeping people at work. Oh, and guess what? The source pays for those state caseworkers. Additionally, we provide over 260% return on investment for our member companies. We partner with over 50 local organizations, and we've saved employers over $2.4 million in turnover costs. The Source provides a lot of services to our employees. We offer access to education, assistance with child care, help with transportation, rent, eviction notices, substance abuse, tax issues, a lot of things. People always ask me a question like, what surprised you most? One of the things that surprised me most about the work that we've done with The Source is how badly those of us in business collaborate. We're set up to compete. That's what we do. We're not set up to solve social problems or take care of people. It just doesn't really occur to us in the structures of our businesses. It's not that we can't. We're rarely asked to. Usually if we're asked to address something like that, it's because somebody wants some money for something, right? Or they have a program they want us to participate in. But they don't come and ask us to help solve the problem. Which is why I'm so impressed with the gathering here today. And one of the reasons I was excited to come here today, because I believe there's a real collaborative approach going on here in Fresno. It's what we learn to do with The Source. We collaborate far and wide, not just with other businesses. We engage with nonprofits, government, education to get things done. And we're no longer the only employer-funded workforce development model in the country. Work-Life Partnership, headed up by Liddy Romero, who you're going to get the opportunity to hear from, has taken the lead on these efforts. In fact, at the close of 2021, over 114,000 people nationwide in 28 different states had access to the services of organizations that were modeled after The Source. That's over $3.5 million invested by businesses across the country, from healthcare to manufacturing to hospitality to financial services, with astounding results. Over 6,000 different barriers, this is just last year, 2021, last year. 6,000 different barriers were addressed. Over 4,000 people took advantage of Resource Navigator hours. Over $200,000 in cash assistance was provided to help people with emergency expenses. By the way, if you have an employee who needs emergency services and an organization like The Source can put cash on a table and help them with that at that moment, that benefit is so much more beneficial to them than almost any other benefit you offer at that moment in time. It creates a huge amount of goodwill. 4,500 households were impacted. 92% of the people who received services and were surveyed said that they felt good about working for a company that provided Resource Navigators. Now, it's my belief that we're just getting started. The further we've gone down this path with The Source, the more opportunities we uncover to collaborate. Exciting things are happening. I want you guys to think about these as demonstration models, because I think you're next. We've all seen charts and graphs about people living in poverty. Whether you use the Alice threshold or some other metric. What fascinates me, though, is how often do you stop and think about who do you know that lives in those statistics? Well, I guarantee you, if you run an organization that hires entry-level help, you know a few of them. It's just a statistical probability. Beyond that, how about the person that checks you out at the grocery store? Person who cuts your hair? Your dental assistant? A firefighter? Child care provider? Person who repairs your car? Your HR generalist? Your AP clerk? Yoga instructor? Maybe the teachers in your kid's school? Maybe we just feel powerless. We donate to our organizations, we serve on boards, we we pay fair wages, we mentor people. That's great stuff. We need to keep doing that. It makes a difference. But for those of us who have influence over an enterprise, our opportunity for impact is huge and immediate. We just can't do this alone. Which is why, again, I'm excited to be here today. In my opinion, employers play a unique role in our economic and talent systems. Our job is to add value by being good at what we do, whether it's making a great product, delivering a great service, or developing some proprietary technology. But I believe our enterprises give us a platform that enables us to make systemic changes by changing our own behavior within a system. We stand at the intersection of income and need for the people who come to work for us. At that intersection, we are best positioned to deliver stabilizing benefits so people will stay at work through those destabilizing events, take care of some of those complexities in their lives, and to connect this back to the beginning, they will begin to be able to think about what success looks like because they will no longer be simply surviving. Ultimately, those efforts benefit our people, our businesses, and our communities. So my hope in writing my book and coming and sharing with you guys is that you will see that the challenges faced by the people that come to work for us are too complex for us to impact holistically with internal programming. But together, if we collaborate across sectors, we can and need to build structures like The Source that can do that work for us. Now, I believe this audience is unprecedented, again, based on some of the communication and reading and work I've done before I got here. And I believe that what comes out of your collective work will be the model to be studied for decades to come. But this is not easy work. You're working to change a system that has been slowly assembled for nearly 100 years. This is a long game. If there's one message that I can bring to you, it's stay in the fight. It's so easy to get triggered by our assumptions that result in our inability to listen to others. Especially as business leaders, right? We never show up with any ego telling people what they should do, right? Is it just quiet because you guys all know I'm right? All right. We do. That's what we do. That's how we grow our businesses. I have a mentor that calls that emotional resistance. We all have it. We all feel it. But when it comes to collaborative work across sectors, especially when working on wicked system problems, that resistance can be so strong. When you feel that, this is when you need to pay attention. We need to pay attention. Seek more information, using appreciative inquiry, dig deeper, contemplate and refocus on that long game. Examine your own assumptions. If we can do that, we can build trust even in conflict. That's how the people in my organization helped me avoid bankruptcy. And that's what I think happened to get all of you here today. Deb and others have spent almost 30 years building this coalition, bringing together leaders across sectors and saying, there is a better way. People are not experiencing the American dream. Who can change that? We can change that. Leaders who are willing to use their influence in the civic arena and change their own behaviors in a system to create different outcomes. We can do that. I'm going to leave you with one last story. Some of you may have heard this story before. Two friends are walking down a beach littered with starfish. As they're walking, one of them reaches down, throws one of the starfish back in the ocean. They have a little more conversation. He reaches down again, throws another starfish in. They go down the beach. This goes on for a while. Finally, the other friend says, "Dude, what are you doing? You are not making a difference. Look around." He reaches down, he picks up another starfish. He throws it in the ocean. He said, "Mattered to that one, didn't it?" The opportunity we have in front of us is not the single starfish. The opportunity that we have is to make sure none of those starfish end up on a beach in the first place. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. Let's have another round of applause for Mark Peters, please. We're going to have a little bit of a set change here. Mark, I wanted to bring up 2 points in your excellent presentation. Your point about Disney, I did not put him up to that because, as you know, Disney is the parent company of ABC 30. That was all on his own. And second, I can relate to your struggles earning good grades as a child because an A- is an Asian F. So that definitely hit home for me. There are so many individuals and business owners in this room who, of course, can learn from Mark's journey and experiences. So again, thank you so much for sharing your story and being a wonderful mentor to our business and manufacturing community. We're now going to take a deeper dive into the exact points that Mark brought up in his keynote speech this afternoon with a panel discussion that will benefit each and every one of you as you take them back to your company. So please join me in welcoming to the stage, first, Lindsay Fox. Lindsay is the president and CEO of the United Way, Fresno and Madera counties. And under Lindsay's guidance, the United Way has shifted focus from simply addressing the immediate needs of our most vulnerable communities to playing a more active role in trying to dismantle the big structural and institutional issues that keep people in cycles of poverty to begin with. Lindsay Fox. Thank you, Lindsay. Now I'd like to welcome from Sacramento, Lance Hastings. Lance is president and CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. He has served several years of his career as a manufacturing executive in government relations with the California Grocers Association and worked in the state legislature. Thank you, Lance, for coming. I feel like I'm introducing bios for like a pageant, a manufacturing pageant. We'll have the talent competition next. Oh, Lindsay's got the wave down. Thank you. Making the trek over the grapevine, thank goodness it's not closed, Tracy Hernandez. Tracy is the CEO of the Los Angeles County Business Federation, or more widely known as BizFed. Tracy and her team are proud to amplify the voices of a vast array of employers and civic leaders, large and small, representing all sectors and communities. Their work impacts decisions on all levels of government. Tracy Hernandez. Thank you, Tracy. And our final panelist this afternoon, all the way from Colorado, she wins maybe the prize for traveling the farthest, Liddy Romero. As Mark mentioned, Liddy is the founder and CEO of Work-Life Partnership, modeled closely after the work of The Source. Work-Life Partnership stretches across the nation, serving companies such as Goodwill Industries, Starbucks, and Method Soap. Liddy, welcome to Fresno. All right, at this time, to moderate our panel, let's welcome back Janelle Taylor-Cumpy, CEO of the San Joaquin Valley Manufacturing Alliance. Janelle.
I think I'm just going to take this mic here, and so I'm not standing in front of everyone, but here we go. Thank you so much, Margot. I appreciate it. And I am just in awe of Mark Peters. And Mark, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And what you had to share with our audience was just fantastic. What you've also done for us, even if it was just to say you have all the pieces, you just need to align them, that is just instilling even more confidence that we're on the right path. So thank you very much. And you've always told us that. So we have made really great strides as a region to work in a collaborative way that we have never seen before. And we are just seeing the fruits of our labor, that is for sure. So that's how we came up with our theme today, the power of unity. And speaking of unity, we have all of you here, and we've been working on such important issues from near and far. And I want to just give you a warm welcome to each of the panelists today, and thank you for rearranging schedules, traveling, and coming from all over the place just to share your viewpoints with us and to share your experiences as well with our audience today. You each have such an imperative and unique role in your communities, and we are learning from that, so thank you very much. And it's one thing to have knowledge and to learn. It's another thing to teach and to share, so we just really appreciate it. You've all been very, very generous with your time and everything. So for our first panelist, Lindsay, I'm going to go with you. You're the CEO of United Way in Fresno, Madera counties, and you have a unique understanding of the challenges faced by our working families. When Mark was here before, you hosted 3 meetings with diverse groups at the United Way. Thank you for hosting those. You also shared your insights with the CEO Roundtable that is replicating Mark's approach and replicating The Source. So help the audience understand how we can accelerate our commitment to integrating human development, specifically human and economic development, specifically how everyone here today can plug in and can assist with that.
Thanks, Janelle. It's so wonderful to be here today. My name is Lindsay Fox. I'm the president and CEO of United Way, Fresno Madera counties. And as the daughter and granddaughter of a long line of teachers and farmers and military service people, I'm sort of the odd man out doing this job. No one really understands what I do, so I'm going to try to help you to understand what I do since my family never does. Some of them think that I'm in the CIA because I spend a lot of time sort of like on these covert missions and going places that don't make sense, but my job is the best job. And when I took over United Way in 2016, I'm coming up on my 7-year anniversary as CEO, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't know what I had to offer the organization, let alone the community, and I didn't really know what United Way did. I just knew that we had an opportunity and we had a brand, because you all know United Way, you maybe just can't pinpoint what the work actually is. And so what I had to do in very quick turn is to try to figure out where United Way could be a value add for our community and where we could start driving change. And it didn't take me long to land on this idea of working families. So you won't hear our United Way talk a lot about poverty, because what we're really talking about is the 33 to 40%, depending on the measure, of families that are struggling to get by, and 97% of them are working. And if United Way should be working on anything, it should be that we should be working and using our brand to solve big problems like that one, like the fact that so many families are living without margin. So what that means is that instead of families who are just living in poverty all the time, what you have are families who are living sort of poverty adjacent. They're living without margin. There's no, if something happens, if they lose hours, if there's a medical emergency, if the car breaks down, there's no margin to help them. And they all of a sudden fall into poverty. And then we have all these systems that we created so that they can get out of poverty. We give them food, we give them basic needs, we give them maybe a month's rent, we call it good, put them back to adjacent, and we go about our way. My United Way had been doing a lot of work and on a lot of really great things that were out in the community, and we were stomping around doing good stuff, and it felt really good. It didn't feel good to me as CEO, because what I knew was that there were families out there struggling every single day to just get by, and working and working and working, and they not only weren't stable, they had no prospect for any kind of prosperity. And what kind of community calls it good when we have people who are working really hard and have no prospect for prosperity? So we became focused on working families and prosperity. And that changed our entire outlook. And it's why I'm here today and why I am so excited every single time I hear Mark talk, because I understood in 2016 that there was an answer to all of this, but it was a really hard answer. And it was an answer that included all of you as employers, as business leaders, as community leaders, getting to the table and addressing the issue. That's what United Way is about. And so what we're thinking about, as part of a lot of different things, including the Fresno Drive work, which we lead the wealth creation plan, and imagine that, from going from, you know what, just being financially stable is good enough for Fresnans, to saying, no, we're working on wealth creation. What a game changer for our community. What a game changer for the people that we care the most about, the people that need it the most. It's not an easy solution, though. Right? Because it's not just get a job. It's not just keep people employed. The problems, as Mark talked about, are so much more complicated than any one business and any one organization can address. And so we all have to come together and recognize that there are already solutions actually in the community, but many times what we're not doing is making sure that those solutions are knitted together and are actually accessible to the people who need it. So if you're working a night shift and the only time for you to go sign up for some special program is during the day when you're sleeping, how does that make sense? If you're trying to get a job but you have no childcare, how do you go to the job interview? How can we start to solve some of the issues that people are presented with every single day and actually have pretty easy solutions to, but we're not connecting the dots and we're not making it easy enough for people to have those solutions? All of this kind of talk about where we are now in the employment environment, all of this, I think is creating a sense of urgency for those of us who are employers and are having a hard time either identifying talent or retaining talent. Like, I'm one of them. I get you, and I'm also, despite my youthful glow and my lack of gray hair, I remember when we were having a conversation about how it's so hard to employ millennials. Like, that was our biggest problem. Like, we didn't even know what was in front of us, right? Like, this is a much bigger problem than that conversation ever was. So it's an ongoing conversation. And what we really have to do is to start to think about things differently. So as you're thinking about how you are running your company and how you're hiring people, or if you're an employee or hope to be an employee, you're thinking about how you interact with your company, think about things differently. Turn things on its head. Consider that there may be another answer, and that maybe, just because I'm CEO, I don't always have the right answer, and certainly I don't have the only answer. We do a lot of listening and we do a lot of learning in my organization because that's how you get to thoughtful solutions. We're all about community solutions that are driven by true community need and designed with humans in mind. If you do those things and you start to listen and learn more than you are coming up with bright ideas and pontifications, things will start to change really, really quickly because it will be centered around the people who it needs to be centered around. Centering things around the leadership and the ideas of leadership gets you where we are now. So we have to think about things differently. One of the other things that I think we need to do, and I'll pass it on because I know I'm probably over time. I could talk about this all day long, so hit me up anytime if you want to chat. One of the other things that I think we really need to do is think beyond the walls of our organizations and about how the policy solutions that could impact our employees, how we have a role in that. How we need to think beyond just employment law and think about the programs and supports and services and projects that could benefit our employees and could actually therefore benefit us as employers. And so things like what Mark mentioned about the cash assistance, I'll tell you, like I grew up in an era where we were all about social services reform, right? Like we were all about making sure no one was getting cash assistance because we didn't trust poor people with money. All of the research from all the economists indicate, from the 60s, from Nixon to Reagan, all of the research indicates that if you put cash in people's pockets, that's the best way to bust poverty. It's the best way to help people move up. I had to retrain my brain around that because I had listened to so much rhetoric around it for so long. And now my organization is one of the most powerful institutions out there to ensure that in many different ways people are getting cash in their pockets. So rethink your role and rethink the way that you're thinking about things and try to listen and learn a little bit more.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're doing really great things at the United Way. I know, just reflecting on some of your comments of meeting people where they are, the SJVMA worked with Reed Lee College as well, just to talk about some of the essential workers being only Spanish speaking and needing to learn English, and putting together a vocational English as a second language program that could be online and also at the employer site. So yeah, there's a lot of resources out there to tap into, and it's just a matter of navigating through them, and it's really difficult for some, for sure. I'm going to move on to Liddy. Liddy, you are the founder and CEO of Work-Life Partnership in Littleton, Colorado, and leading the national initiative to replicate this approach. While services are like The Source, you started as a nonprofit in 2009 to foster economic equity and a thriving workplace across the country. Can you share with us some of the most important lessons that you've learned? What is that secret sauce maybe that you can share with us?
For employer.
Yes, for employer engagement and work life.
Right. So I'm Liddy Romero, coming from Denver, Colorado, grew up in Texas, founder, CEO of Work-Life Partnership. I took the model that Mark Peters talked about in his book, replicated it in Denver, and then scaled it across the United States. Thank you for having me. As I look across this landscape too, I see current manufacturers and future entrepreneur manufacturers, and it's very promising to see that in Fresno, so thank you for doing what you do. I consider myself an entrepreneur as well. I have a staff of 42. I've grown a business for 13 years and continue to grow it right now. I think there are a couple of bullet points, I would say, from what you said. One is that we tend to say poverty, and we think, show of hands, how many people think poverty is like below minimum wage? Does anyone have yeah. How many think it's below $20 an hour? How many think it's below $30 an hour? So it's usually in education when I work with my employers who buy work-life services. What is the living wage in your area? How many of you know the living wage in Fresno? Do you know living wage?
Minimum wage.
living wage. So it's a concept that we say people living in poverty, right? But they are working, right? And they're working and they just can't make it. There is more month than money. People have all these new expenses, internet being one of them, technology being another, that you need in order to thrive or survive and thrive in our communities, in order to work, in order to be a good employee. We try to redefine, or we try to rethink what poverty is to an employer. We know that a lot of people who are working are living that month-to-month wages. We also know that people cannot mobilize through your training, apprenticeships, job-based or work-based training programs if they cannot stabilize. And stabilizing means that they have secure housing, secure transportation, that their kids are well taken care of, that they have food on the table, that they're free of domestic violence. Stabilization means all of that. So for us, we really help to accelerate, right, employer investments in their frontline staff by helping them recognize that the term poverty isn't what it used to be, that it's very relationship-based, that it's very, it has to be, you have to understand what it takes to make it and to thrive in your community, what's that wage in order to live from there. And we also talk about sort of how do you support your frontline employees, stabilize your frontline employees so that they can take those opportunities that you give them in order to mobilize, make that better wage, make that better career outcomes for themselves.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank you, Liddy. I recall when I graduated from college, I called myself the working poor because you didn't make enough for a living wage and you made too much for any kind of services. So that's a really tough spot to be in. So now we're going to move on to Mr. Lance Hastings. Lance, as President and CEO of the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, or CMTA, your job is to protect and enhance California's manufacturing sector in terms of policy, regulation, and fostering business development. And you and your team are doing a fabulous job at it, so thank you. As more now understand, manufacturing or making stuff is central to quality of life and even national security. Our area is being seen as an opportunity region where manufacturing can still flourish if conditions are right. So Lance, can you tell us how you see that happening in our area and making sure that the landscape is right for manufacturing to flourish?
Thank you very much, Janelle, and happy to give some insight about this region, but the way that we make the region successful is the ecosystem that's in this room. It's not just manufacturers who make things that make a community. It's everybody in the room, including academia. I'm heartened by the number of young people in the room today because when CMTA was founded in 1918, no, I wasn't there at the signing, they didn't have necessarily a mindset of sustainability. They knew that they had an immediate problem to form an alliance so that manufacturing interests could be represented in Sacramento, but they weren't thinking necessarily 104 years down the road when I'm sitting up on the stage. But what they unintentionally did was create themselves for what's going on in this room. And it's particularly to the younger folks that are here today that I want to first say thank you for coming out on a Thursday morning to learn more about manufacturing and pique your interest, because as cliche as it may sound, you are literally the future of this industry sector. And we've relied too long on the 25 and 30-year employee that when they started at 18, 19, or 20, that they were going to be there until they were 60. That model is shifting. And we have to be prepared for all of those eventualities and having people skilled and trained to come into the manufacturing industry because, and I use this as a soundbite, manufacturers literally make everything. Not just some things, not the things you like, we make everything. And I'll use a quick COVID example that the state and the nation needed protective or personal protective equipment, so PPE. Restaurants weren't going to make masks. Doctors weren't going to make masks. Manufacturers needed to make those things, and we rose up to the occasion and addressed the need for all of the community. And I think that's one of the proudest things that have occurred in the 4 years that I've been leading CMTA. But I do want to convey that we're the voice of the manufacturing industry in Sacramento before the governor, the legislature, and regulatory agencies. And we have a narrative that we need to fix, because most people think of manufacturing as dirty, dark, and dangerous, how Hollywood wants us to see manufacturing, and everyone in this room knows that's not the case, but only the ones in this room know that that's not the case, and we have to share that narrative everywhere else so that people truly understand what manufacturing is, but what they also need to understand is what manufacturing can do to a person by giving them self-worth, self-value, contributing to the economy, and yeah, you can put that little valve that's on the rocket that's going to the moon. That's what manufacturers do, and we really need to tell that story much more with great anecdotes and bring it to life for everybody, and then I think manufacturing is going to succeed. This valley is the most important economic region in the state of California, and I would say that at any stage. Everything happens here in the Central Valley, and it's a future that's so bright, but it has to be bright for the folks that live here and want to continue living here. And I think manufacturing is the industry sector that's going to provide that opportunity more than any other sector. So to the young folks that are here today, ask questions, be enthusiastic, and I just applaud you for being here today to share.
Thanks, Lance. I'm going to ask another question. I know it's so important that we do change the narrative about manufacturing, and people and folks in this room, they understand, they get it, that's why they're here, or they're learning more and more about it. How do you think that we can actually elevate the understanding of our public and elected officials about the importance of this essential industry?
I am a big fan of seeing is believing. So the lettuce doesn't grow in the back of the grocery store, and your car doesn't get manufactured in the back of the dealer. So we have an obligation to open our doors. We're just out of manufacturing month, which is October every year, and manufacturing day is always the first Friday in October. That's our opportunity to show people, and I'm convinced the more that they see, the more they understand, and then they can make good policies rather than sitting in Sacramento or Fresno and I know what's going on out there, because they don't. I've been in this role 4 years, and I still don't know what's going on out there, but I know what we're doing is important, but seeing is believing. So open your doors as manufacturers to the public officials, but also open your doors to the younger folks. I mean, that's what an ecosystem is all about. But with more understanding, I think we'll have better public policy.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Lance. And last but not least, we have Tracy Hernandez. Tracy has an extensive background in journalism as a publisher and CEO, has served on many boards supporting education and economic development, and is founder of BizFed, a massive grassroots alliance of over 210 business organizations. Wow, what a feat. Now you have co-founded New California Coalition to advance common sense, mutually beneficial policies to support both the regions of California and the state as a whole. So that is wonderful. We are so excited to have that happening in California and here in our region and the various regions throughout the state. Can you please share your vision for this work and how people can become more informed and engaged? It's so important that we do learn, and how can we plug in?
Thanks, Janelle. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be an organizer at my core. And I bet a lot of you are organizers at your core. So you want to influence people around you, your family, your neighbors, your community, your business, and you want to help organize people to find and identify good solutions to make your situation better, to tackle the problems around you, and then have a loud voice. When you're organized, you have more people speak up for those solutions. And we need to break down the fear and the barriers for those of us just regular people, regular Californians, to say it's okay to talk to those that are making decisions. So who's making decisions? Sometimes it's elected officials. It might be, the Fresno Council or our mayor. It can be our board of supervisors. It can be those in the state legislature, the governor. But it can be people just at the regulatory agencies and boards around us that are setting the rules of how we're to operate, how we are to function as a society and as business owners. So in BizFed, what is BizFed? It's a business federation. So the concept was 14 years ago is that together we would be stronger, and not any individual sector knows it all, right? And not any size of employer and shape. So together we would be one smarter. I come from publishing newspapers every day, so it was always start with the information and be open-minded to those that think differently than you or that have different ideas than you. So first, let's get at the facts and the information. So we said, let's invite all the existing business groups. So there's the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. There's the Manufacturers Alliance. There's the Fresno Business Council. There's the Fresno Black Chamber. There's the building industry. There's the Western States Petroleum Association, and on and on. So we today in Los Angeles, in Southern California, have 230 different business groups. So some are the Golf Association, some are the Restaurant Association, some the Latino chambers, the women's business groups, and so on. 230. In those business groups, they have employers of every shape and size. Some of them employ one person, some 12, some 200. We have some people that employ 28,000 people here in California. Everyone coming together. Those 230 groups have 410,000 companies, believe it or not. Now, all those companies, as Mark was saying, are set up to compete, to survive, to thrive, to make payroll every Friday, frankly, right? And then to compete for our goods and services for people to buy them and want them, and so that we can grow and prosper. And you were talking about, wealth creation and lifting people up. So getting 410,000 business owners to agree to share information, number one. Then once we learn something, there's a solution, and we need to talk to a decision maker. Let's do it together and get each other's backs. So that is happening, and then Central Valley said, that's not a bad idea, so let's get a BizFed in Central Valley. And you guys were one of the first ones, Mike Betts was one of the first ones to say, let's get the Manufacturing Alliance to do that for Central Valley. And so we have 75 groups from Bakersfield to Fresno in 44 cities, and about 39,000 companies involved in BizFed. So every day now, we're sharing information on what any governing body who's writing laws, regulations, taxes, and fees affecting our employees and our companies. And then now we're organized to speak up and do something about it and to get each other's backs. Sometimes if you're the one with high risk, it's a manufacturing issue, Lance then needs the people who build homes to get his back, or the people that run restaurants and so on. So we're standing up for each other. But then you mentioned the New California Coalition, so what's happening, right? And then we said the storytelling and the messaging, and Mark does a nice job of storytelling, right? Talked us through his family life and his business life and what led him to a change agent. So we've realized that in California, there's 20 million Californians that are registered to vote and then choose to do it on occasion. We don't do it all the time, all 20 million of us. I looked just yesterday, and we have an election coming up on Tuesday, and 11.7% of the Californians had voted as of yesterday for November 8th. Now there'll be a whole lot of you voting between now and Tuesday. But 20 million people registered to vote, so that means they're civically active, they care, they want to have a say. But how do we communicate to them in a way that resonates with where they're at in life? That's really the New California Coalition. And Janelle, you said it's sensible, it's common sense, it's pragmatic. That's pretty darn radical conversation in California, to use those words. And we've done some analysis, and actually it doesn't matter, it's nonpartisan, it doesn't matter how you affiliate, what party you sign up for, no party preference, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But if you're tired of the super extremes not really working for all of us, getting us to the opportunities that we want here in California for us to grow, innovate, survive, and thrive here, as you were talking about, So we need to come back to the middle. And there's about 9.7 of those 9.7 million of those voters that are actually fairly moderate. They're more middle. They want sensible, common sense, pragmatic, measurable solutions. They don't want the super radical this way or radical that way. They want the aspirations, but they're willing to measure it. So that's what we're doing is we're talking to regular Californians. We're inviting them into a civic movement to give them a home and a place and to feel protected and surrounded, that there are a lot of people who actually like reasonable solutions. It's okay to be aspirational, which we all are, but then there's a point where you have to measure those aspirations and then institute laws and ideas and public policies and solutions that you can get from here to there. And, you know, not completely freak out and disrupt too much. You have to disrupt a little bit on your way to better good, but you also have to be reasonable so that people want to be in California, that they can afford to be in California, they can stay in California, and they want to come into California. That's what we're doing. And so it's called newcaliforniacoalition.org, and you can sign up. It's free. So how can you get involved? You can join the movement. And if you feel like you want to be a part of something and then you want to connect with others that are sensible, common sense, pragmatic, and are going to offer solutions, and then support those that will stand for reasonable, will stand for more the moderate voice, you'll get connected. So it's newcaliforniacoalition.org. And in Fresno is quite a leader. Actually, the Central Valley is quite a leader. You see Pete Weber is here, and I mentioned Mike Betts and Deb Nankivell and others. We're doing these regional meetings all over the state because it literally is for all over the state. It's for Sacramento, it's for the Bay Area, it's for Los Angeles, it's for San Diego, it's for Central Coast, it's for Tahoe, and it's for Bakersfield. So when we came to Fresno, we did a what if meeting a while back in Fresno. Ashley Swearingen hosted us at her place. We had the Black Chamber there, and we had BizFed Central Valley, and we had the mayor and many other people. And out of that came, like, we really need to lift up the values and the ideas and the solutions of the Heartland. And so there's a California Heartland Coalition division of the New California Coalition. So it's alive and well, and you can be a part of that specifically to then work with your colleagues and the other moderate people around the state that are going to find solutions that lift up all of our manufacturers, because we can say we want it, and I liked how Lance said we have to change the perception of what it is. What'd you say? It's not dark and dirty and whatever. A lot of people, you know, like have the negative aspect. So we're going to shed light on all the great aspects, advanced manufacturing, every kind. We're on cutting edge of using the best technology and the best forms of employing and getting our work done. But people still are nervous about letting any new manufacturing come about. There's the life sciences, for example, that are dying to be here in California. They're on cutting edge advanced technology, great paying jobs, very clean operating manufacturing, in addition to all the really clean operating manufacturing that's happening here in food processing and the other. But they can't site property, they can't get permits, they can't open buildings and so on. So those are just some basic, again, the common sense aspect of it. And I'll just lastly leave you with a thought. For a while I felt like I was in the manufacturing business all my life, running newspapers, daily newspapers. We had to print and publish, start from scratch with nothing 365 days a year. And 365 days a year, we had to completely put a product together, go to production, and deliver it to our customer at their home. Every day, no matter what was happening in the world or with our employees. So from that sensibility, I was in that space, and I was always like, I kind of glommed onto this idea of how to do things different, how to be really good at what you're doing. And someone once said to me, you know, you don't really get what you expect, you get what you inspect. And for a long time, I was like into that. I'm like, you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. So what do you pay attention? Now, as we all evolve and move forward in our lives and what we're trying to do today with the tools that we have, I actually spin that slightly. And I say you get what you expect by inspecting. So it does matter, the details matter, Mark was talking about himself and how he leaned in and was paying attention to the details, listening to people. So you do have to inspect, you have to pay attention. You can't just say, I want all of this to happen. You then have to benchmark and start moving the needle and see what works, what doesn't work, adapt, adopt, and so on. So I'll just leave you with, you get what you expect because those are your aspirations. You really expect to do better, to thrive and survive and compete better. But you get it by inspecting yourself and your ideas along the way.
Love that. Thank you. You definitely have to be a part of it. You definitely have to learn what, your thoughts are and everything, and then be inserting yourself into, learning more and being able to contribute as well. So that's all the time we have for our panel. I hope that you are all able to gain additional insights into the work that goes on into a thriving community. And our hope is for each of you to become more informed, engaged in an area of passion, and where you will make the highest impact and become an ambassador of your network. So if you are interested in learning more, some of our panelists will stick around. I know, Lydia, you have to catch a flight. So you can engage with them and definitely seek out myself, Deb Nankiville, Mike Betts, anyone that you've heard of today. And make sure that you also please revisit Mark, his resource page on Mark's website. And then also seek out any of our board members as well. We would welcome your thoughts and ideas. Thank you again to Lindsay, Lance, Liddy, and Tracy. We appreciate your time with us today and all of your insights and what you had to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janelle and panelists. What a great discussion this afternoon. To Lance's note about perhaps changing the narrative of manufacturing, especially here in the Valley, I would invite you all to submit story ideas to ABC 30. We are always looking to profile local businesses, producers, manufacturers, farmers. We even have a special show called Valley Made, and Dale Urong hosts it, and he's always reaching out to the community trying to find those great stories. So if you have an innovation, a great product, a great business model, or you just take care of your employees, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear about it and perhaps put it on one of our shows. You know where I work, ABC 30. All right, and just a reminder that the goodies inside the boxes on your table, they are for you to take home, to enjoy. Please leave the boxes on the table, but please take all of the goodies that are inside. All right, now to bring it all around and close our luncheon program today, please give a warm welcome to the CEO of the Central Valley Community Foundation, Ashley Swearingen.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? Good. Hi. I was trying as hard as I possibly could to think of a manufacturing joke to start my remarks. There's nothing really funny about manufacturing. I mean, can we manufacture some humor? Maybe that's about as far as I could take it. Thank you, Bren. I appreciate the courtesy laugh. Well, listen, it is really a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon and to celebrate the San Joaquin Valley Manufacturing Alliance, to celebrate the educators who are in the room, the students who are in the room. This is a high mark for our community every year. And I'm happy I got to stop by for just a few minutes. I didn't get to be here all day, so I can only imagine the cool stuff you guys have been doing. And what I'm going to do is just tie some things together. In fact, Deb asked me from the Fresno Business Council if I could just be here at the end and try to do just that, make some concluding remarks and pull everything together. And I said to her, Deb, you know I run a community foundation right now. I don't really have a lot of insight in the manufacturing sector, but being Deb, she encouraged me to come and just to share some thoughts with you. So I'll do that quickly, and then I know we will get on our way. The observations I want to share with you for the next few minutes about our community, our broader region, our economy, our civic space, that space where we all come together. I've learned so much of this from hanging out with many of you, working alongside many of you for the last almost 25 years. And Deb in particular is always calling us to that space where we leave behind our single interest and we come to the middle of the room to really take up a collective agenda. And that is, in fact, how communities, regions, and economies prosper and succeed in a way that lifts everybody up. So I want to give you some observations on our community, our collective space. And I offer these as my observations only. Each and every one of you have your own narrative about what's been going on all around you, in your business, in your school, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community organization. So I'm not offering this up as the authoritative, this is the only way to think about Fresno and the Central Valley, but they are my observations for the last 25 years doing community and economic development work in this region from a variety of platforms. So just take them for what they are worth, my observations. And I'll just say one more background point. My mom was an American history teacher when I was growing up. I was raised in the southern Midwest, and my dad was a preacher. So in my household, the adults were always talking about old stuff. It was like back in Jesus' day, or back in George Washington's day, or back in, some people who came like way before we did. And I grew up with this great sense of history. I went on to get a couple degrees in business and probably missed a lot of the details that my parents wished that I had captured. But I think because I was always seeing them project backwards and think about these great historic moments, I grew up with an appreciation for the moment that we're in. And I remember thinking about, hearing about these great Revolutionary War times and various courageous moments, the Civil Rights era, all these things in American history, and certainly from, ancient times as well. And I remember as a kid thinking, I wonder if the people in that story knew that in that moment they were living in a great time. Because we're talking about it still to this day. What would it have been like to have lived it? And not just be a part of looking backwards and thinking about it. I wonder if they knew. I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe someday in the afterlife, I'll get to ask some people these questions. Did you know Mr. Lincoln? Or did you know Moses? Or did you know, what did you know at that time? Did you know it was a significant moment? But whether or not it's going to be proven to be true that we are in fact living in a significant moment in time in this region right now doesn't really matter. I feel like we have to act like we are. I feel like we have to treat this time and our collective experience of being neighbors and colleagues and professional associates and friends. I think we have to treat this time in Fresno and the Central Valley as if we're going to look back 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and tell the stories of the right now. Do you know what I mean? Because if we have that perspective today, it's going to change the way we think and treat and respect this moment. I think Fresno, I believe it will be proven to be true, and only time will tell. I believe we are living in a significant time in California's vast Central Valley, and that Fresno is perhaps at the tipping point of becoming one of the greatest American success stories in the history of our country. It's possible that we go from being among the most disinvested and underserved to being a success story that inspires other communities just like ours, other communities that are more resourced than ours. And if we can inspire other communities in California and in the nation, surely we even have the potential to affect what happens in the world. So I believe that what's happening in Fresno, California right now, it matters, and we ought to treat it as such. And if we lean into that, we have that much more of a chance of that actually becoming the truth. But here's why I think that we're in a significant moment. And some of you have heard me comment on, I'm going to try not to look at Ken Newby because he's going to make me laugh. I've been talking about we're 20 years into a 40-year fix for about 7 years now. So at some point, someone is going to hold me accountable for the timeline that is constantly moving. But we'll deal with that later. It's not precise. It is directionally correct. But I like to say that we're 20 years into a 40-year fix for a couple reasons. For one thing, it helps give the sense of like, wow, 20 years is a long time. You know, there are some of you in the room that y'all even have been around that long. 20 years is enough to go after systemic change and be on your way towards generational change. It's long enough to know that, oh wow, some of these things are really working, but oh my gosh, there are so many things we didn't even think about that we haven't even gotten to yet. 20 years, halfway, suggests we're right at the point where like maybe we could crest the hill and get some momentum. And the market and the cultural norms in Fresno and like sort of the wind could be at our backs for a change instead of in our face if we can crest this hill. I think we can make that claim because when I look back over our collective history in the civic sector, I think there's some significant characteristics of the last couple of decades, and I'll be quick here in pointing them out. First of all, I believe, again, history will prove me right or wrong, I don't know, but I believe that as a community, we're finally focused on the right things. I think that we've tried really hard in the past. We've swung the bat, but we've failed to make contact. Putting a lot of effort into the wrong thing does not produce transformational and generational change. It just means you sweated. You worked hard. I think we've aimed at the wrong things in the past. I think we've thought that, well, if we could just get this particular warehouse to move to our community, if we could just get this particular milestone met, everything will be fine. I'm guilty of doing this. And we've seen some significant milestones, but what we've done along the way is we've collected those milestones. We've started to say like, hey, this alone is not enough. It's not enough to make these policy changes. We're still seeing the results that we're seeing in terms of economic disparity and place and space, segregation, worse here than in other places in the country. Like these things are real challenges. And it's like after 20 years of a lot of people doing everything they can and seeing some success and progress, it feels like we're finally all coming together behind a shared vision of inclusive prosperity in our community and dealing with long-standing racial gaps and racial disparities and also long-standing underinvestment and lack of performance in our economy and education and all those things. So we finally got all of these pieces pulled together. I think we're aiming at the right things. I think in the Fresno area there is a constituency for change. And I always say you can divide Fresno people up into two categories, people who are committed to change and people who want things to stay the way they are. And people who are committed to change, let me tell you, we fight with each other like cats and dogs. And we just have to every now and then say, hey, time out. We're all trying to make things better. Can we sit for a second and hear each other's concerns and agendas? And can we share those agendas? Because we're all on the side of change. And there are thousands of people. Let's just look at this room and all you represent and so many other stakeholder groups, thousands of people that I would put squarely in the category of being a constituent for change. And that gives us a momentum and an energy to sustain this effort. There is a collaboration that's happening in Fresno and the Central San Joaquin Valley that's literally talked about around the country. I mean, the circles are small, but they are around the country, these circles, so give me that. There is something about, and we were just in Bakersfield last week for the California Economic Summit, and there's something about being further south in the Central Valley and having proximity to LA and seeing some lift from that economic activity over the years, or being farther north and feeling like, the Bay Area is almost going to reach us. We'll just sit back and wait long enough, and eventually we'll get, the rising tide from the Bay Area economic drift. We don't have either of those two forces in the Central San Joaquin Valley. Like, it's just us. And there's a lot of effort that's been going on. We've all tried our best. We're tired of not having results, and it's actually created an attitude and an atmosphere of collaboration that now I think is our greatest asset. We have really high quality civic programs in this area. I won't go into detail, but I think this room is a perfect example of that. Things we're doing are working, they just simply need to be scaled, and that is a sign of progress. And then the last thing I'll point out is this: we're starting to attract attention, and that attention is coming with financial investment, and that financial investment is not enough for generational change, but it's enough to take this work seriously and to fuel these efforts and to hopefully get us over the hump. I think we have a lot going for us here in the central San Joaquin Valley, but the question looms: will we get over the hump? I don't know about you, but I don't have any interest in working harder than I've ever worked in my entire life. In this particular nonprofit roles I've had in the past, if those efforts, if our collective efforts don't actually break the back of chronic double-digit unemployment and the greatest racial disparity of large cities in California, like what are we doing? I have no interest in just being busy or getting credit for trying. We're actually trying to fix this stuff. So what's it gonna take to get over the hump, to crest the hill, to feel the momentum, and not feel like that if the emails don't go out tomorrow to follow up on this conference, things are just gonna fall flat and we're gonna all go back into our own silos again. What's it gonna take? I think there's 3 simple things that we have to be mindful of to get from where we are today to that momentum building and handing off leadership to the next generation and seeing them run farther than we ever could. Number 1, these are all, did I mention I'm a daughter of a preacher? So my 3 things start with the same letter. I'm the daughter of a Southern Baptist preacher. 3 H's. Number 1, humility. This collective space that we call our community, that the Business Council has talked about as the 4 spheres, that, you know, I'm sure you all thought you were coming to a business conference and you didn't realize like you're gonna get, you're immersed in this conversation about community. This space where we all come together and we leave our single interest behind. And let's be honest, when we approach that middle space, because we're proud of what we do, we kind of think our sector and our corner of the world is the best, or else we wouldn't be working there or living there. Like, I kind of think the economy E is the most important. Other people might kind of think the equity E is more important. Other people think the environmental E is more important. The reality is we all have biases. That's a fact. And that's okay. But when we come into the community space, we have to let go and let down and be prepared to hear that other people's priorities are just as important. Other people's contributions are just as important. Can we make this pivot? Can we get over the hill? It will depend to a great extent on whether or not our collective energy, we can find ourselves as individuals and as collectives and really walking in just in a grace for humility. I know everything I know, I put it at the table, but I don't think it's everything. I gotta learn from other people, I contribute everything I can, and together, that's how we crest this hill. Number 2, another H, hard work, quality execution. We have grand plans. They really are beautiful. We have like nationally recognized quality plans. Can we execute these plans? I think, and I'll be critical of my own efforts, I think in things I've done in the past, I'm great at saying things we're gonna do, but can I actually follow through on it? We have to double down, triple down, quadruple down. And this is where the manufacturers and those of you who every single day are in the business of executing against your plans, we need you to bring that into the civic space and create that support and expectation of quality execution. We need it in our CBO sector, we need it in our civic sector, and we for sure need it in our private sector to continue. Hard work and quality execution will determine whether or not we crest this hill. And then lastly, and a little bit of a repeat from the first H, we gotta hear one another. We gotta hear one another. We have to lay down our offense towards one another, and I'm speaking globally now, and it's true for Fresno. It's very easy to be offended these days. I mean, I got offended 10 times driving down here. You should have seen the drivers on 41. It's so easy. It's so normal to be offended in your business, in your personal relationships, in our community spaces. It's so easy. So we could choose to be that way. We could choose to stay there. And we could potentially see 25 years and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment slip through our fingers, and we cannot crest this hill. And at the 17th Annual Manufacturers Alliance Summit and the 27th Annual, we will be talking about the same things over and over again. I'm just like not into that. I'm 50 years old. I don't want to, when I'm 77, be talking about being 20 years into a 40-year fix. We got to have humility for the next leg of this journey. We have to work hard, continue working hard, and really set our sights on quality execution. And we have to hear one another, pass the offense, hear the heart of words, not just the sound of the words, because there's breakthrough. I'm telling you this. Economies grow where people know how to reconcile. Like that, I did not know that 20 years ago. I did not necessarily know that 10 years ago. I could have made a long list of stuff that I wanted to see in our local economy, and we're starting to see those things. Innovation, technology, education, like all these things are happening, but guess what? If we don't know how to reconcile, we're not going to be able to experience that shared prosperity. We got to do that. So it's a new skill. We're going to learn it. We are learning it together. I think this room is a great testament to that. And I'm really excited for the trail that you're blazing. So, as I said, you thought this was a business conference. It is, but also you're living in a historic place, in a historic moment, and you have something to contribute. If you're not already involved, I want to encourage you to get involved. The Manufacturers Alliance brought you all together today, maybe for the first time for some of you. If you want to learn more about what's been presented today or get involved in any way, there's a QR code on your program. Just take a quick picture of that, fill it out, and the Manufacturers Alliance team will get in touch. Whatever you have to contribute, you may not exactly see the fit, but I encourage you to reach out, get involved, because I can assure you in this community, we have a need for what you have to offer, and I guarantee you, you're going to benefit from contributing to this generational change we have in front of us. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Ashley. Ashley Swearingen, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Well, from one former mayor to our current mayor, Jerry Dyer, he sends his well wishes. He really, truly looked forward to being here today to see you all, but he got caught up in city business, and we all know how that goes. So he just sends his well wishes and hopes you have a great rest of the conference. Again, thank you so much for coming. There's still plenty more of the day to enjoy. Be sure to visit the exhibitor booths during your break. The breakout sessions convene at 2 o'clock. And of course, don't forget to stick around for that happy hour at 3 o'clock in the exhibit floor lounge. There will be a prize given away, so it will be worth your time. Make sure you use your Whova app. Enjoy the rest of the Valley Made Manufacturing Summit. Thank you all for sharing a meal and a message and all that you do every day for this great valley of ours. I am Margot Kim. Thank you so much for having me again this year, and we will see you again next year.